On October 10th, 2024, we boarded the Norwegian Viva in Ravenna, Italy, for a 9-night Mediterranean cruise that would take us to Split, Croatia, Dubrovnik, Croatia, Corfu, Greece, Santorini, Greece, Kusadasi, Turkey, Istanbul, Turkey, and Mykonos, Greece. This was our first cruise with Norwegian Cruise Line, and overall we had a really good time. For this cruise review, we're going to introduce a new scoring system. Each category will be scored between 1 and 10, with 1 representing a very unsatisfactory rating and 10 representing an outstanding rating. This will give us an overall score for our experience on the Norwegian Viva. Keep in mind that this review is based on our experiences during this one cruise and may not reflect how other passengers might experience the same cruise. I should point out that there are several areas of the Viva that we either couldn't get to because we didn't have access or didn't visit because we didn't have time. This itinerary was very port heavy with no sea days, so that made it more difficult to really explore the ship. We have quite a few categories to review, kicking off with the crew in general. On numerous occasions during the cruise, we encountered crew members who were genuinely happy to see us, wanted to be of service, and really seemed to enjoy their jobs. We've seen this before with other cruise lines, so it was nice to see it on an NCL cruise as well. As we go along, we might call out some specific crew members for a job well done, but on the whole, we'll give it a 10 out of 10 for this category. Next up on our list is our stateroom attendant, Dim Sung. We met him on embarkation day, which is normal, and then for the rest of the cruise, we would see him occasionally in the evening. The room was always perfect after his work, and he even left an extra card for us to keep in the light control in case we needed to keep some electronics charging while we were out of the stateroom. The Viva has those card slots next to the front door where you have to insert your stateroom card to turn the lights on. Our request to be able to continuously charge our electronics is outside of the usual policy for NCL, but Dim Sung informed his superior that we requested it and he took care of it for us. We could not have asked for a better stateroom attendant, definitely a 10 out of 10. Next on the list is the stateroom. We absolutely loved the standard balcony stateroom, number 14178. That's 14178. As you can see from the video we recorded from our stateroom tour, there are plenty of electrical outlets, room under the bed for suitcases, a proper bathroom, plenty of room to hang clothes, and so on and so on. It's definitely a 10 out of 10. Next on the list is the Viva Theater. It's very nice, although smaller than I expected. It's unusual that they have many different possible seating arrangements. Our first time in the theater was on embarkation day, and most of the seats were hidden as they were using the floor space for tables, where crew members assisted guests with dining reservations, box office reservations, and so on. Later, we would visit the theater each morning as it was the designated meeting space for our most shore excursions. One night during the cruise, we saw one of the main production shows in the theater, and that's where it really shined. All of the latest lighting and sound, and it's just an excellent space to watch a show. One side note here regarding performances. NCL didn't make any statements about not being able to record video during a show, which is something we've heard before on other cruise lines. Since we didn't hear it, we assumed it was okay to record, but alas, it wasn't. Apparently, they have a crew member who looks for passengers who might take a photo or video recording sometime during a show and quietly asks them to stop. We saw this happen several times during one show. As a score on the theater, I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Maybe it's not an issue, but to me, the theater seems smaller than it should be. We also didn't like the way the recording was handled. They should tell everyone up front like we've heard on other cruise lines. Next on the list is the Penrose Bar. We stopped by here a few times to get a drink and enjoy the live music. The bar itself is nice and big and features a nice custom drink menu. One thing that stood out as a curiosity is that the bar is next to the casino, and there are several poker machines built into the bar at one end, just outside the doors to the private casino entrance. We never saw anyone playing poker at the machines. It just seemed like an odd addition to the bar. As for the rating, we had a good time there, so we'll give it a 10 out of 10. Next on the list is the Penrose Atrium. The 3-story atrium, which is essentially midship, is a nice divider between the venues at the front and the back of the ship. It's very spacious, and the bottom level on deck 6 functions as a dance floor when the DJ is playing or the live musicians over by the Penrose Bar. The stairs going from deck 7 down to deck 6 make the perfect backdrop for photos, and we even saw one of the ship's photographers setting up to take photos on those very stairs one night during the cruise. My rating for this area is a 7 out of 10 because what's noticeably absent to me is a proper sound system. This is a large area of the ship where music is frequently a part of the festivities, and the ship's designers missed the opportunity to mount speakers in the appropriate places on the ceilings and walls on the sides of the atrium to really fill in this space with sound. Instead, a single small speaker at the lower level on deck 6 is very inadequate for the 3-story atrium. Next on the list is Cagney Steakhouse. While we didn't eat dinner at Cagney Steakhouse during our cruise, we did pop in for a few minutes one afternoon as part of the ship tour. From a layout and design perspective, it's a fairly basic specialty restaurant on a cruise ship, nothing out of the ordinary. It did come up in our planning for the cruise, but due to the menu and our dietary preferences, we ruled it out. Because we didn't eat here, I'm not going to give it a rating. Next on the list is the Commodore Room. Similar to Cagney's, we did not have dinner in the Commodore Room during the cruise. However, we did see the interior on a couple of occasions because the crew members were using it as a staging area for the shore excursions that required tendering. We were not very impressed with the size or the interior. Hudson's would seem to be the primary main dining room on the ship. Because we didn't have dinner here, I'm also not going to give this one a rating. Just outside of the Commodore Room is the Belvedere Bar. While we didn't have a drink at the Belvedere Bar, it looked pretty nice, and I really liked the seating area in front of it. The area of the ship where this bar, Cagney's, and the Commodore Room are located was an area we hardly went in during the cruise. We went there pretty much only as needed, such as the shore excursion tendering. Because we didn't really visit the bar and get a drink from there, I'm hesitant to give it a rating. Next up is Starbucks, the one area on the ship that we probably spent the most time in during the cruise. The Starbucks on the Viva was an interesting situation for me. I'm not 100% sure how Maria felt about it. The venue itself is very large, as you can see from the video. There's enough room for several crew members to work there at once. But one thing we noticed on several occasions was the staffing level. There were too many instances where it was understaffed. You'd walk up on many occasions and see a line of people waiting and only 1 or 2 crew members working. Another oddity was the food. A smaller menu of food was available with many items you'd find in a Starbucks on land, but most passengers only wanted the coffee. Offering the food didn't make any sense to me. Another issue related to Starbucks was the lack of options. If you wanted a fancy cappuccino or a latte, the only other option on the ship was the tiny Starbucks bar in the Surfside Café, but they only serve Starbucks there too. If you desire a cup of coffee from a brand other than Starbucks, you'll be out of luck. One nice thing that worked in our favor was that everything from Starbucks was included in our Free at Sea Plus package. For the Starbucks venue on Deck 7, I'd rate it an 8 out of 10, taking off 2 points for the staffing issues. Next up is the Shore Excursion team. While we didn't really interact with the Shore Excursion team from the standpoint of discussing or purchasing excursions from their desk, we did see them in action for the tendering process. Using the Commodore Room for the staging area mostly worked without issue, but they were missing signage that could have helped, and they should have had other crew members to help them with the mass of passengers in such a small area between Cagney's and the Commodore Room. That area of the ship wasn't ideal for what they were using it for. They should have used the atrium instead, but that's just my opinion. On the day of tendering for Santorini, Greece, it was haphazard, so I would rate the Shore Excursion team a 7 out of 10, primarily for that reason. Next is guest services. Thankfully, we didn't have to interact too much with guest services desk. Still, one time we stopped by to ask a question about passports in Istanbul. They did a great job of explaining what the local authorities had told them and helped us make an informed decision on what to do when we went ashore. There's not much interaction, but we did see them constantly helping other passengers during the cruise, so I would rate the guest services desk a 10 out of 10. So the next area of the ship to cover is on Deck 7, kind of tucked away in the corner right behind Starbucks. It's called Iconnect. In the interest of full disclosure, I was not happy with how NCL or the Viva approached Wi-Fi for this cruise. We booked our reservation with Peter and John at Cruise Planners. I'll put their contact information on the screen. They booked us into the Free at Sea rate, which included 150 minutes of Wi-Fi per guest. Minutes of Wi-Fi. What is this, the year 2000? And that's basic Wi-Fi at that. When I upgraded to the Free at Sea Plus, which cost me another $900. We got unlimited Wi-Fi, but at the basic level. I needed a third device for my laptop, but I was considering adding that one at the premium level in case I wanted to live stream on YouTube or Facebook during the cruise. Long story short, I had to spend another $575 on the ship to get all three devices to the premium level because the basic Wi-Fi was so restrictive that we couldn't do anything but use Facebook and check Gmail. I long for the Royal Caribbean approach where you buy unlimited Wi-Fi per device for a set dollar amount per device, and there is no such thing as a basic or premium. It just works through Starlink from SpaceX. The Viva was also using Starlink, but the overall cost to get to that same level we're used to with Royal Caribbean was way too high. We're going to rate the NCL method of providing Wi-Fi on the Viva as a 3 out of 10, primarily because it's overpriced for the same level of service on the same provider offered by other cruise lines. So fitting in nicely with Iconnect is the ship's Wi-Fi, so we're going to talk about that one for a second. Separate from the money aspect of Wi-Fi on the Viva, the actual service was very disappointing overall and downright irritating at several points during the cruise. In fairness to NCL and the crew of the Viva, the problem, from what I can tell, is the same as the other cruise lines and cruise ships we've cruised on before, an overall lack of capacity. The Starlink system used by all of the cruise lines puts up very impressive numbers when taken in context. A very small number of passengers on the ship, or usage in the middle of the night when everyone is asleep, and the service performs quite well with impressive numbers. In the middle of the day on a sea day, when everyone is awake and on the ship and actively using their devices, good luck. The connection speed for such things such as video calls or Teams and Zoom meetings is up and down, and on top of that, the overall capacity is such that it just doesn't work. We ran into this on every cruise, regardless of the cruise line, going back to when Starlink first became available on ships. It's either a limitation on Starlink's ability to provide proper internet service en masse, or the cruise lines won't pay for the proper amount of bandwidth. On the use of the Wi-Fi on the ship, I'll give it a rating of a 2 out of 10. It was almost useless most of the time during the cruise. Next up is the level of shopping on the Viva. With the cruise on the Viva being our first one with NCL, I was surprised at the level of shopping on the ship. It was more premium than I think I was expecting. Maria noticed several brands that cater to women that she recognized and liked, and they were available in a couple of the stores on the ship. The prices, brands, and overall quality of the merchandise for sale also contributed to my idea that it was a premium shopping experience on the Viva. We saw a similar level of shopping on the Celebrity Beyond and the Scarlet Lady from Virgin Voyages. One thing that was mostly absent, good or bad, was the volume of cheaper t-shirts for sale that we're used to seeing on a Royal Caribbean cruise. They did put out some of those sale items towards the end of the cruise, but not many. I'd rate the shopping at a 10 out of 10 overall. Next is Sid Norman's Poorhouse. This is one venue on the ship that just isn't large enough. The overall size of the ship limits certain aspects of the cruise on the Viva, and similar to the Surfside Café, Sid Norman's needs to be twice as large. It's a fabulous venue with a very talented band, but it was so popular on our cruise that we could never get in there to watch the performance because it was always packed with a line down the hall and standing room only inside. For this one, I'd give it a 5 out of 10, primarily for the lack of space and the lack of seating. Right across the hall from Sid Norman's, the Improv was also a small venue. It never seemed to have the line down the hallway problem of Sid Norman's because it's a comedy club, and during our cruise it just didn't draw a large enough audience like Sid Norman's. We stopped in on the Improv once for a few minutes to film for the review, and it looked nice inside. But because we didn't really spend any time in here, I'm hesitant to give it a rating. Moving over to one of the specialty restaurants, it's Le Bistro. We had dinner one night in Le Bistro because our Free at Sea Plus included 4 specialty restaurants, and Maria and I both had an eye on this restaurant as a must for this cruise. I had the Belgian endive salad for my appetizer, roasted pork chop for the entree, and flunete for the dessert. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. I don't remember what Maria had, but we both thoroughly enjoyed the meal. If I'm being honest in the review, the one aspect about specialty restaurants on the Viva that I was not expecting and didn't really appreciate was getting a bill at the end with $0, but a place to leave a tip. I thought the included meal would be the entire included meal, all of it. With the paperwork presented to me that showed how expensive the meal usually would be if not included in the Free at Sea Plus, I felt obligated to put a nice tip on there that went towards my onboard expense account. Between the 4 included restaurants, this was an extra $100 that I had not planned on. To be transparent, we don't normally eat at specialty restaurants on Royal Caribbean cruises because the MDR is usually just fine for us on a Royal cruise. So it could be that this practice of leaving the paperwork like this, where the crew is expecting a tip on the included meal, is common practice. The restaurant itself was awesome. I'd rate it a 10 out of 10. Located down on deck number 7, it's the Metropolitan Bar. We had drinks there a few times, and I really liked their digital menus on iPad-like devices. The menu was expansive with quite a few options, and the bar had plenty of seating. Its proximity to Hudson's makes it a great place to get a drink while you're waiting to be seated in the main dining room. I'd give the Metropolitan a 10 out of 10. Speaking of Hudson's, this is the main dining room on the ship, and it's quite impressive. It's very large as it spans the entire back of the ship from one side to the other, and the wake view is exceptional. We noticed that the service was quick as we saw many passengers moving in and out. You could walk up to the hostess at the entrance to Hudson's and be seated for dinner with no reservations needed in just a matter of minutes. The food itself was very, very good. I'd give Hudson's a solid 10 out of 10. So this next one is going to be a little strange. I'm going to call it Deck 8, the entire outdoor area around the ship. While this may seem like an unusual item in the list of the cruise review, the entire Deck 8 exterior was so incredibly awesome that it deserved its own section in the review. The only area of the Deck 8 exterior that falls down is the bow. It's closed, so you can't see anything as you're walking around from one side to the other, but as soon as you start walking down the either side, it opens back up, and that's when the awesome view returns. The very back of the ship on Deck 8 was our favorite place to record video of the ship departing from a port. Also at the back of the ship on Deck 8 is the entrance to the Indulge Food Hall. When you add the infinity pools, outdoor restaurants, and the fabulous Soleil Bar, it's easy to see why Deck 8 outside the ship is so amazing. This area of the ship is definitely a 10 out of 10. Located on Deck 8, at the top of the atrium, is the Whiskey Bar. The Whiskey Bar is your destination for a premium alcohol experience. We passed by a few times, but because I don't drink bourbon or whiskey, we opted for other bars with a more expansive menu. What we did see when we stopped by looked very nice, and we're sure the menu would be a very tempting distraction for a whiskey drinker. Let's put it that way. But because we did not have a drink at this bar, I would feel hesitant to put a rating on it. Next up is the Onda Italian Restaurant. We are a sucker for Italian food, and since we had 4 vouchers for specialty restaurants with our Free at Sea Plus upgrade, Onda was a must. As with all of the other areas of the ship, the food and the service were top notch. I'm sure I'm going to butcher these names, so please bear with me. For the cocktail, I had the Negroni Mediterraneo for the antipasti, the burrata for the second, the beef fillet, and for the content, the fingerling potatoes and roasted carrots. I don't remember exactly what Maria had, but we both really enjoyed the meal. Similar to the experience in the bistro, I was presented with a $0 check to add a tip for the server, and giving the displayed prices on the menu, I felt compelled to leave a nice tip. That's also similar to the bistro. It wasn't in my budget for the cruise. Tip aside, I would still rate the overall restaurant a solid 10 out of 10. Next on the list is the photo gallery. As with a few other areas of the ship, we passed through the photo gallery on numerous occasions, but didn't really stop and shop, as it were. The photo experience was good, but expensive, with a single photo priced at $30 just for the digital download. We purchased our 3 photos through the app, and that was the extent of our photo purchasing on the ship. I did see a portrait studio in this area of the ship, and they do an excellent job if you're willing to charge that much to your onboard account, which some people do. I'll give this area an 8 out of 10. They had a lot of nice shopping, but the individual digital photos was a little too expensive. Next on the list is the local bar and grill. Located in a busy area on Deck 8, the local bar and grill is an interesting aspect of the Norwegian Viva. It's split into 2 parts, with the larger starboard side designated as the bar section, which has next to no food available, and the smaller side on the port side of the ship designated as the restaurant section. It has an impressive menu and quick service. We had several meals here, including breakfast, a mid-afternoon semi-lunch, and a dinner one night early on the cruise. It's also worth noting that the local has an outdoor seating section on the aforementioned Deck 8 exterior. Taking all this into account, I would give the local bar and grill a solid 10 out of 10. Now we come to one of our favorite areas on the ship, the Indulge Food Hall. The Indulge Food Hall on Deck 8 at the back of the ship, next to the local bar and grill, is the coolest thing I've ever seen on a cruise ship. I'm just going to say that again. The Indulge Food Hall on Deck 8 at the back of the ship next to the local bar and grill is the coolest thing I've ever seen on a cruise ship. With a variety of food stations available, the order system via the tablets, the quality of the food, and the speed of the service, this quickly became our go-to location. We had several dinners here, breakfast a few mornings, etc. This feature of the Viva is the best representation of Norwegian Cruise Line's idea of freestyle cruising, and it was nothing short of amazing. I'm going to break my own rule with this one and award the food hall an 11 out of 10 for a rating. Next up is the Pulse Fitness Center. We were so busy on this cruise with lengthy shore excursions at each port stop and no sea days on this 9-night cruise that we didn't really have a chance to enjoy, quote unquote, the ship as much as we would have liked. One area where this held true was the fitness center. We try to be good on cruises and bring some workout clothes, but you know how that goes, good intentions and all. We did spend a few minutes in the fitness center recording a video for the review, and it was impressive with a nice selection of new equipment, plenty of space, and of course, those gorgeous views off the bow of the ship from Deck 16 high above the waterline. Because we didn't actually use the fitness center, I'm hesitant to give this one a rating. Similar to the fitness center, Maria would have booked the thermal suite in the Mandara Spa and Salon had this been any other cruise where we had not decided on so many shore excursions. When we toured through the spa and salon, she was a little envious of the passengers relaxing in the thermal suites. NCL has done a good job in designing this area properly to give the spa ample space to relax. Similar to the fitness center, because we didn't actually use the spa, I'm a little hesitant to give it a rating. Next up was the Observation Lounge. Another area of the ship that I wish we could have spent more time in was this incredible lounge on Deck 17 at the bow of the ship. If you look at the Viva deck plans on the NCL website, this area doesn't look as big as it really is. The views are stunning. There are plenty of comfortable places to relax and enjoy that perfectly crafted cocktail from the bar that is conveniently located in the lounge. And the vibe overall is very relaxed. We only passed through here once for a few minutes to record some video. I regret that we didn't spend more time in here more often during the cruise, but we didn't really have time. I was so impressed with this area, I will give it a 10 out of 10. As the observation lounge wraps around the front of the ship on Deck 17, the Galaxy Pavilion and Arcade are tucked away inside the lounge, so they're separate but next to each other. This was the first arcade I'd seen on a cruise ship that had such nice virtual reality games. It's worth noting that we saw just as many adults playing them as the kids or the teenagers. While we didn't really spend much time here, similar to the lounge next door, I was very impressed, so I would rate this area a 9 out of 10. Up next are the dry slides and water slides. The two different types of slides available on the Viva were interesting to me. The dry slides made sense, and we saw passengers really enjoying those. The water slide, the Wave, didn't make any sense at all. It's not that big or long, and it seems out of place on the ship. I hate for it to sound negative, but when I saw it for the first time, I couldn't help but think, why bother? NCL would have been better off using the space for something else. The three dry slides that launch from Deck 18 offer some redemption in this area, so I'll rate the slides in general on the ship as a 7 out of 10. When it comes to the main pool deck on Deck 17, it's kind of small when compared to other ship pools we've seen over the years on other ships. Even though the size of the pool might be an issue, the pool deck is very nice with plenty of chairs, a large infinity hot tub on each side, and a video wall opposite the pool bar with what looks like an area where a DJ could perform between the LED wall and the pool itself. One other small detail that I'd consider a plus for the pool deck, it's very close to the Surfside Café. For this area of the ship, I feel like the pool is a little too small, so I'm rating it an 8 out of 10. Next on the list is the Surfside Café. The buffet for the Norwegian Viva, better known as the Surfside Café, is about half of the size that it should be. For us, that was the main takeaway. The food was very good and the crew members were top-notch, actively serving and interacting with the guests. It's just too small. On busy mornings, breakfast is where this becomes apparent rather quickly. There's limited room for the passengers to move around, and the seating is tough to maneuver because everyone is right on top of each other. On a couple of occasions, we avoided the buffet for breakfast and chose the food hall or the local bar and grill instead. Primarily due to the poor design, we're rating the buffet a 3 out of 10. Next is the Surfside Grill. At one end of the buffet, but technically in its own little space with a door on each side, sits the Surfside Grill. This little addition to the buffet didn't make much sense to us. It's small, and the buffet could easily handle the food served here had it been designed properly and with the correct amount of space. We've experienced buffets on Royal Caribbean ships that were literally twice the size of the Surfside Café, and a space like the Surfside Grill would have been just part of the buffet because it was all part of the same space on that Royal Caribbean ship. That's just for comparison. In the case of the Norwegian Viva, they must have decided on the Surfside Grill for a reason, but we're not sure what it is. It's a nice little space for what it is, so we'll give it an 8 out of 10. Up next is Palomar, a specialty restaurant on the ship. By the time we had dinner in Palomar, we were about 2/3 of the way through the cruise. Dinner each night on the cruise had been exceptional, so we were confident that Palomar would live up to the example set by all of the other amazing restaurants on the ship, and boy did it ever. The food was absolutely amazing. I had the Greek village salad, Dover sole, and vanilla cheesecake in a jar for dessert. Maria had the Thessalini salata, lavraki, and the French apple tart a la mode. This one was an easy to rate, solid 10 out of 10. Located on deck 18, the stadium on the NCL Viva was very interesting. It features several games that you don't often find on a cruise ship in an outdoor but covered setting. We tried the tubular ping pong for a minute, but holding a camera and trying to play a ping pong in such an unusual contraption as a big round pipe is not easy. As I mentioned earlier with the schedule of this cruise, we didn't have much time to really explore and enjoy the ship, and that includes this area. We passed through a couple of times for a few minutes each time, but it wasn't enough to really stop and actually play any of the games. That being said, this looks like a very fun, unique area of the ship, and we'll give it an 8 out of 10. Next up is Time and The Bullseye. Similar to the stadium, we didn't have enough time to enjoy either of these areas fully. They look like they'd be a lot of fun, but I must confess I don't understand the cost of playing either of them. This feels like nickel and diming the passengers for something that would typically be included on a lot of other cruise ships. While the facilities themselves are very nice, the requirement for a fee to play would cause me only to give this a 5 out of 10 rating. The Viva Speedway is next on our list. Maria really wanted to try out the go-karts on the Speedway, but we couldn't find the right time to line up. These go-karts were only running at certain times, and our schedule for this cruise was rather insane, with no sea days and an early morning shore excursion at literally every stop. The track itself is quite impressive, and it's one of the selling points for the ship, as well as a cruise on the ship. It would have been really nice to at least have seen some others racing around on the track to at least get some footage for the channel. The restricted operating times might be the only real negative here. There is a fee to drive on the track, but that's not unusual. We'll give this a 7 out of 10 rating. Next up is not an area of the ship, it is the Free at Sea program. This is going to be a little bit of a rant, so I'm going to warn you ahead of time. For the Free at Sea program, NCL has since changed it and renamed it to More at Sea. The Free at Sea program, at the time we booked this cruise, and during the October 2024 cruise, included some very good things, but was also missing other things that would seem like a no-brainer. When we first booked this cruise through Peter at aisleseattravel.com, it was booked under the lower level of the Free at Sea that included drinks up to a certain dollar amount, credits to book shore excursions, and 2 included specialty restaurants, along with a head-scratching idea for internet, 150 minutes of internet per person. Remember, that was the internet that is the standard level. We hadn't seen the internet by the minute in many years. Unlimited internet is the norm for cruise ship Wi-Fi packages, but NCL didn't get the memo on that one. This lower level also did not include the required crew gratuities that are now commonplace because the cruise lines won't properly pay their employees. There was an upgrade option available prior to the cruise, so I spent another $900 to upgrade to the highest level possible for Free at Sea. The upgrade took care of many of the alcoholic drinks because it included any level of alcoholic drinks, had no more price cap, and brought us up to the 4 specialty dinners. But remember, this did not include any gratuity for the crew members at those specialty restaurants, and our Wi-Fi was upgraded to unlimited, but at the non-streaming level. Once we were on board the ship, I had to spend another $550 to upgrade the 2 included Wi-Fi devices to a streaming level, plus add a 3rd streaming level for my laptop. The required crew gratuities were not included in the upgrade to the highest level of Free at Sea. For a 9-night Mediterranean cruise on the Norwegian Viva, we spent a total of $8,770. That is $6,942.28 for the cruise fare, with the port fees and taxes at the lower level of Free at Sea, $900 for the Free at Sea upgrade to the highest level offered, and then $927.72 for the onboard spending, which was mainly due for the necessary upgrades for the Wi-Fi and the required gratuities. Overall, we had a great cruise with NCL. I'm on the fence about the total amount spent and whether it was a good value. As for the old Free at Sea program itself, which has since been revamped, I would give it a 5 out of 10. And next, we talk about the ship itself. The Norwegian Viva is indeed a beautiful ship. It had several areas that we absolutely fell in love with. There were quite a few other areas of the ship where NCL didn't make the ship large enough to give it the proper amount of space needed for all of the amenities. This is really noticeable on Deck 17. Pretty much everything on the deck is squeezed for space. The buffet is too small, the pool is too small, and there's a single strange water slide that doesn't quite belong. The theater on Deck 7 is too small, Sid Norman's on Deck 7 is too small, etc. Had they given the ship another 30 to 40,000 gross tons to size everything properly, it would have made a big difference. Taking it all into account, I would rate the ship at an 8 out of 10. And so we come to the points. 259 total points of 320 possible points for the areas of the ship and the aspects of the ship that we gave a rating to, which comes to a total rating of an 8 out of 10. This was our first cruise with NCL. We had a great time overall and would consider NCL again in the future, but it would depend entirely on the ship and the itinerary. There were small things about how NCL operates that I did not like when comparing them to other cruise lines we've cruised with in the past. They weren't deal killers, but at the same time, when I'm planning a new cruise, NCL isn't the first cruise line I'll be looking at. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this review helpful. Please consider giving it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any of the content from this cruise, and we will see you in the next video.